Yes, oh gosh, it started when I was so young. I was just close to 3 years old when, due to an accident in which I drowned, I had my first near-death experience. And I can say that's where, I guess, the path of starting to remember who I am truly started to happen. And I can say this because during that drowning, had, I just encountered, I just was able to realize, starting to realize my true nature. And the way this happened is that I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and my parents used to leave for work and would leave us at the care of a maid. And she was a lady that didn't really pay attention to us when my parents were not around. And early one morning, my oldest sister, she was close to 4 years old. I was close to 3. And since nobody was paying attention, imagine two little children thinking like, oh, we can just go and do whatever we want. And then we went to the patio of the house, and then we found a ball. And the problem with this patio is that in one of the corners there was a big tank, and we were not allowed to play in that tank. It was a big tank to gather water, especially for hand washing clothes. And this tank probably held about like 900 liters of water, so it was a pretty big tank. And then my sister and I, of course, what is the first thing you're going to do? What they tell you not to do. So we just like grabbed the ball and decided, let's go play cash across the tank. No one is watching. We climbed this tank, and my sister sat on the flat surface that was used for scrubbing, so she was a little bit safer. I went to the other side where there was a thin edge, and I was leaning very precariously in this tank, but we're just having fun. Who's thinking about any danger? And then she threw the ball, and she didn't apply enough force. And the ball is floating in the water, and I thought, "Oh, I could just grab it." And I leaned forward, and the moment I touched the ball, it rolled. I lost my balance and I fell in the tank. The first feeling when I touched this water was the feeling of the water being frigid cold. People have the misconception that because I am from Colombia, I am from hot weather country, but I was born in Bogota, there in the Andes. So high up in the Andes, the temperature in this this early in the morning, it probably was around 6:30 in the morning. It was pretty early. Maybe was, I don't know, 3-4 degrees Celsius. So this water was frigid cold. So maybe, or we could say maybe 4 or 5, but it was very cold. And of course, the moment I touched the water, it already took my breath away. And after this horrid sense of frigid water, it was the sense why I cannot breathe. I had never been in a pool. We didn't have a bathtub. So I never have been underwater. I didn't know that if you are under the water, you drown. So now imagine, Natasha's just this tremendous state of horror, why I cannot breathe. And it's when I say, and something incredible, a miracle happened. And it's when I was battling to get out of this tank in this terror, and absolute peace and calmness and serenity. Oh, I didn't know what happened. I didn't have a clue. I just knew that I went from being horrified to not needing to get out of the tank, not needing to breathe, not needing to go anywhere. And I'm just there like, oh, this feels so incredibly good. And I want to answer one question that people always ask me: how can you remember if you were so young? And I always like to bring the clarity of contrast. Throughout this experience, there was a lot of contrast. So at the end, I have to say, how can I actually forget? The first contrast was what I just mentioned, the horror of drowning. Drowning is a horrific experience. And going from there to peace, to that absolute and complete peace, how can I forget that? Next contrast, this tank was a very dark space. It was early in the morning. There was a roof on top, so the tank in itself was a very dark space. So when I drowned, the last thing I saw with my eyes open was darkness. And Natasha, the moment I entered into that peace, that calmness, that serenity, light came from below. And it was a light that was dim, that was it wasn't flashing like blinding. No, it was soft, but bright enough that it was able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. But it was peaceful light. It was, oh, now there is light. I remember feeling that, now there is light. And then it came the next contrast, and is that I was living in a house that was very noisy. I have my sisters, we have birds, there was dogs, there was always noise. And also when I was drowning, imagine when you're in a state of terror and your heart is pounding. And I could hear my heart pounding like a drum. Boom, 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 boom. And when it stopped, there was silence. Absolute silence. And this is the silence that I call the silence behind the silence. It was that silence that comes with peace and absolute stillness. So imagine it is so good that even after the accident, when I was already back, I craved that silence for the rest of my life. And later in life, I will hide in closets. I will go under the bed and under the sheets because I wanted that silence back. And it took many, many, many years to discover that that silence was not something outside. But at that moment, I didn't know. And that was like, oh, how can I go back to that? So now I have that delicious, incredible silence, light, peace, serenity. And then I started to see bubbles. And the bubbles were surrounded by light. And with that childlike spirit, is like, wow, bubbles. And then I started to chase the bubbles. And it's when I'm chasing the bubbles that I see a body. And it's when I have the clear realization, oh, that's my body. And the body was floating in the water. And you know, the amazing thing is that when I saw the body, I didn't have the feeling of feeling like nervous or scared. It was just the sense, again, like familiarity, like, oh, that's my body. The only thing that I would just say is something I could never like get away was the expression in the face, the eyes. You know how people say that the eyes are the mirror of the soul? At that moment, when the body was floating, the eyes were open and the eyes were empty. It was that sense of feeling like, ooh, that was the only thing that kind of like shook me. It's like, ooh. It felt almost like if this body was just a costume and that it was empty. So that was one memory that I could never really erase from my mind, that impact of seeing the eyes of the body. And now it came the next contrast. And this is a very important one, Natasha, because I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost those 3 years of my life, almost 3 years, sick. I didn't know anything else. I was born with respiratory problems, and I spent all the time feeling ill. And now that I am in the state of absolute well-being, imagine, like, when I look at that body, I was like, I'm not going back there. And I made that conscious decision that I was not going to go back into that body. And I turned around and left the body behind. So sometimes we will wonder, like, how a child can be born sick like that. And in my case, and I can tell through the experiences in my life that there was purpose. And in this specific case, the purpose was that if I was born as a very healthy child and happy in my body, this experience happened and I might not remember it because there was not contrast that shock enough to remember the difference. But no, at this moment when I'm seeing that body, I'm like, I'm not going back to that. I'm feeling incredibly well. And I turned around, and the moment that I left the body behind, I started to see flowers. And the flowers are blooming from nowhere. And I'm like mesmerized. This is extremely beautiful. And even the sense of dimension disappeared when the flowers pick me up. And now I'm being carried by the flowers. And I'm just like, oh, this is like Raymond, like rest in there. Like, this is so good. I didn't have to do anything, go anywhere, just rest. And then this is when something happened that changed the whole scene in just a flash. When I was in that state of joy and just peace, in just a flash, I appeared in the maid's room where she was listening to soap operas in the radio. I even remember with clarity what she was listening. And then I looked at her from above and I'm like, whoa, that's Maria. I'm like floating above her. And then it's when I realized that Maria was completely unaware of my presence. Like, she was just completely engaged in her soap opera and nothing happened. And since nothing happened there, like in another blink, I appear in my mom's path. What I mean with that is my mom didn't have a car and she was walking and she was near to her bus stop when I now appear above her and I'm floating. And I'm like, whoa! And the moment that I'm floating above her, I said, wow, that's mom. And I have to say, Natasha, this is the moment or this part of the experience that one validates the experience. And two, I think this is the part that blows everybody's minds because it's the moment I said, that's mom, she stopped. She did not even hesitate. She knew something is happening at home with one of my children. And she turned around and started to run back home. And I have to tell you something that is important, a little of backstory. My mom just had got a new job and she was on her way to that new job. What would you do? You're going to a new job. You're not going to attend your mind and, oh God, so, no, I mean, that's your new job. But no, this call was so intense that she had to turn around. And I have to say two things about my mom. She was very intuitive. But the other thing is that she listened to that intuition. And by listening to that, now she's running. And then I'm looking at my mom and I'm like, I wonder why she's running. And then when I'm looking at her, I got distracted because at the end of the road, I saw a dog. And I adore animals. So the moment I saw the dog, I forgot everything about my mom. And something was amazing because when I felt the desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. I'm like, whoa. And then at that moment, I saw a park and I felt the desire to be in the park, I was in the park. And I'm like, whoa, this is so much fun. And now I'm playing a game of going places. And it's like time and space, the way we know it, completely changed. And now I'm having so much fun. And then when I'm playing this game of going places, in like another blink, something again happened and I appeared in a realm. And this was a realm that was made of pure, bright, like very, very brightful white light. It was intense white light. And when I appeared in this realm, is when I felt for the first time in my almost 3 years that I was home. It was the sense, imagine, I already was experiencing the sense of peace and serenity, well-being, joy, nothing compared with the feeling of being home. It was like, I am back home. And home, the place where you feel welcome, where you feel embraced, where you feel good. And then at that moment, something else happened. It was the realization of, wow, that body that I saw, that is not what I am. Although I have seen my body, all that, up to this point, I really didn't think who I was just having fun. I would never stop and think, oh, what is it that I am now? Nothing. I just didn't think anything. But at this moment is when I'm like, whoa, what is it? What is it that I am? And at that moment is when I realized myself as a being of light. And I started to feel the sense of kind of dissolving, kind of like, oh, feeling that sense of, let's call it being one with everything, like interconnected. Like the feeling of like, oh, I'm not just this separate individual. It was just the sense of, oh, connection with everything. But I was still having a sense of self. I was still having a sense that I was a self. But I have to tell you, Natasha, even that sense of self, individual self, completely vanished when I experienced what I call nothingness. Some people might call it non-self. Some people I hear the term of emptiness, whatever it is. But I call it nothingness because it was at that moment. I probably this is the most difficult part to explain of the whole experience because there's no words for it. And it's taken me many years to be able to talk at this level of like, oh, this script, this, but it took many years to put it all together and understand it and find words to even try to describe all this experience. But I call it nothingness, and I can give you an analogy because at the end there's no narrative, there's no meaning, there's no description, but it's like, to give you an analogy, is like, imagine a big stadium. And in the middle of the stadium, there's a little tiny box. And all I thought I was that box. And suddenly the box opens. And is the realization nothing because it's nothing that you thought you were. And at the same time, wholeness, totality, expansion. So how could you just, those are the words I can put for an experience like this. I guess the other words I can use are maybe pure consciousness and absolute presence. Because on a state like this, I could not even describe movement or color or meaning or sensation, nothing. It's just maybe another thing I could say, complete interconnection. And again, because it took me so many years to find words and to put it into context, It took me 40 years to actually try to put it together. But at that age, I also didn't know the meaning of love or the meaning of God. I'm saying I'm just about to be 3 years old. But as I started to know in words or in description what God meant, I was like, it's like I was completely embraced in the arms of God. Let's call it the mother and father in heaven. And there was later in my life, I met this teacher, this yogi, and she said to me, Ingrid, what you experienced was, imagine that you are a child, a little child, and you get embraced by your mom or your dad, and the child completely forget that is an independent and individual being and melts in the arms of the father and the mother in complete love. So that's what I experienced, love beyond anything, peace beyond words, and a complete and total embrace. So maybe I can describe like that, a little bit of what that was. And when I am in this state of bliss, if I am going to mention any emotion, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing, she knew exactly where to go. We lived in a big house, and she didn't waste any second going anywhere else. She went directly to the patio, like if she was just guided. And then my sister was there, and this is the other question people ask me, why your sister didn't call the maid? No, because we did not supposed to be playing there. So she was afraid to be scolded. So she's trying to help me out. And my mom arrived, and she's like, Ingrid is there, and I cannot get her. My mom jumped in the time she got me out, and she said that I was like a raggedy doll, no pulse, no breathing. And then it comes an amazing synchronicity. My mom was a teacher, and she had been trained to do CPR for children. Whatever she knew to do, she did to me. She was like shaking. She did everything she knew. And Natasha, I did not feel anything she was doing. At this point, I'm telling you, the idea of Ingrid is gone. I'm in my complete state of bliss and connection and union with God when I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And I felt like I was being vacuumed. Like the feeling was horrendous, was this sense of like, and there was nothing I could do to stop this. And I actually, I didn't want to. I just was like, no. I was like holding back to that. And no, I just was pulled. And I knew I was back when the feelings of coldness and the feeling of sickness and the feeling of, imagine going from the expansive state of being back into the little box, all that expansiveness and everything was gone. So I was very, very, very angry. People will think about how you should be grateful your mom saved you. No, in the contrary, I was very mad. And how can I explain this with another analogy? I can say, imagine that you have a child and you bring the child to an amusement park, and the child is having the happiest day of her life. And suddenly you say, oh, we have to go home. No, I don't want to go. That's how I felt like, why are you taking me away from that bliss? So after that, things were very hard for us because I was very angry. I resisted. I didn't want to be here. And that persisted for many, many, many years. And there was another thing, Natasha. I came back with an awareness I didn't have before. That was clear. So when I would look at my parents, it was the feeling of like, no, these are not just my parents. I had experienced that sense of interconnection, that oneness. So to me, my parents were like my equal. So I just felt, why do I have to listen to these people? So I became very rebellious. The other thing I now was what we could call today soul conscious, because when I look at myself in the mirror, I would just be like, I'm not this body. I am not this. And that's the experience I had when I saw my body. And later I realized I am not that. And is that I would cry and I would pull my hair and I would scratch my face and go to my mom, you don't understand. This is not who I am. Imagine, I mean, and being almost 3 years old, you don't have the language to express what is happening, what is the thing you're holding inside, what is that I experienced. So that was very, very, very hard. And then I will look at other children and think, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. And I could not really relate with people. I could not relate, especially with children. To me, it was like, what is happening to all these people? And then to validate that this child really had a different kind of awareness and skills. I came back with skills I didn't have before. But I mean, with that, I'm just about to turn 3, like I was saying, and then suddenly I can read and write after this experience. And they start to discover this like pretty fast over time. And now I could develop mathematical problems and put together complex puzzles. And I could, now I have even like a language. I started to pick the language pretty fast and have a more elaborated language. So imagine that a child that is under 3 years old don't have the abstract mind developed yet. It only happened until you're 5, 7 years old, or even later, 10 years old. I already had it. So for me, it was easy to put together like numbers and letters and puzzles and painting. So all this started to happen, and it evolved more and more and more through the years, to the point that when I went to school, which I started very early, it became a problem because there was not a schools for children like me. So it came to the point that the teachers will be like, they feel that I was obnoxious, or like, this child asking so many questions. And so they will be like, if you know everything, just sit in that corner and let us be. So these things, incredibly, a lot of these gifts that apparently like look so good, when you don't know how to work them, when there's no people around to understand what is happening, they just can become burdens. So growing up, things were pretty hard. Yeah.
It's incredible. And I know, like, people have said, how can you remember something at that age? But you weren't a 2-year-old child. You were a soul with all its consciousness that was present.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Wow. How long in total do you think you were under the water?
We are not sure, Natasha, but like thinking about the time where my mom was located, and the time it took, because walking slow, like she would take about 10 minutes to get to her from the house to her bus stop, but now she's running. But we don't know how long before that I fell. So we're thinking it could have been between 7 and 10 minutes. I
Yeah.
think the reason why the body was able to survive and not have brain damage was because the water was frigid cold. So that's the reason why the body was safe. But despite that, imagine I already had respiratory problems after that. Things turned really, really bad. So after that, I got bronchitis, chronic bronchitis, asthma. So the respiratory problems continue even worse after such an experience. Yeah.
Interesting. I was just thinking, it's amazing how you referred to your body as that body, because most people that have had a near-death experience, they don't have an association. It's just a body. It's not their body. Yeah. And it's, I mean, it makes sense because you're not that body. We seem to we get so caught up, and a lot of people think, even in the work I do, people think that confidence comes from how you look and what your body is, but you're not your body. It comes from
Exactly.
inside. Yeah, it's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Wow. So what happened after that? So you went to school, you obviously had a really tough time, I can imagine, because you probably wouldn't even identify with kids your age either, because they would either think you're strange, but your mind would be so far ahead from where they are.
Yes, it was very, very difficult. I felt very ostracized. I was bullied. It was very difficult because I was not like anybody else. So there was a moment like but before that, Natasha, I have to tell you that what probably kept me going and and that which is also in the minds of the people a very strange way to survive things. But after my near-death experience, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. So, because this is the other part, when people ask me, how can you remember? I said, it's just like for me, the doors never close. It's like the doors never close. And later in life, I received a message, an insight that said, Ingrid, of course, the doors never close because in reality, there are no doors. What we call consciousness, God, the kingdom of heaven, whatever people want to call it, universal consciousness, the light of consciousness is here for everyone, always. Always. We're the ones that due to, I don't know, due to beliefs, due to conditioning, due to fear experiences, we close the doors or we close the window. But imagine the sun is shining out there. It doesn't matter how many windows you have. If you peek through, the sun is still out there. So it's the same thing. It's like it's now our work to peel those layers. So for me, it's like that got removed. And I had that conscious awareness since I was a little child. So it was very, very difficult because now I could see with the eyes that nobody around me could see. And I'm having these out of body experiences, but I don't know what is happening. I just know that I am going back to the realm of the light. And at the beginning, it was very disturbing because I would feel that vacuum. I will feel, and I would go through experiencing sounds that I have never hear vibrations, colors, movements, like very fast vibrations. And then, but I will go back to that realm of the light. And it happened every time I went to sleep. And then, so at the beginning, of course, my parents fired that lady. They hired a new one. But since she didn't have to take care of me because I was sleeping all the time, it was good. So she let me sleep and I was just navigating out there. And then I would go back to there and I was so peaceful. And in one of these journeys, what saved me from, I guess, losing my mind and from saving everybody around because my parents didn't know to do what to do at this point. But I started to go peaceful because of this. And in one of these journeys, one day I was completely surrounded by starlight figures. And these star, I say, imagine, I didn't even know they were at the beginning. It's like when the only way I can explain is when you go outside at night and you see all the stars. See, but this was all white space with starlight figures shining, and people call them today orbs in like all different colors. And I'm, wow. And then so I now wanted to go there even more. And in one of these journeys, one of these starlight figures that was shining in gold shaped itself into a human form to show me, we're the same thing. And I'm like, and it's when I say, you are a being of light. And that's when I started to call them beings of light because it was a being shining light. So it was a literal like that. So it touched me in the head and I woke up and I said, wow. And when I started to see these beings, I started to feel peaceful. It was the sense like, oh, okay, now it was a peace that I have lost when I came back here because I didn't want to be here. And then balance had to happen. I could not be the child now that is sleeping forever. So some balance was needed there. And one day I'm taking a shower. By this, I'm now like close to 4 years old, around 4, when I'm taking a shower and I'm relaxed in the shower when a intense, big, bright blue light appear in the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, now the beings of light are here. And then from that point on, I started to see them here too. And when I started to see them here was when I started to really calm down, to really feel, oh, now I can be here. And I started to feel the sense I can eat, I can play with my sisters, because I even refused to eat. You don't imagine how it was for my parents. And I pity my poor mom to keep me here because I just didn't want to. And then this was the beginning of a teaching of course I didn't understand until many, many years later, but it was the teaching of realizing that the moment I started to feel good when they were here was opened me to the realization, again, I didn't get it back then, but later on, that home was not a place, but a state of being. Because now I was like, oh, and now I could play, I could be with my sisters, I could function here. And that's what allowed me to function in this, in my human body, let's call it in the 3D. And then because there was a moment, Natasha, that I didn't even know, I thought that this was the dream, which actually it is. Every time I was in the realm of that, I'm like, oh, I am home. And I would just like, why do I have to wake up here? Why do I have to be dreaming this? Maybe the opposite. So it was very hard. It was hard. And then once I started to feel good, something else that was pretty interesting happened. At the beginning, the beings of light didn't say anything. They were just, their presence was enough for me to feel, oh, this is so good. And then I could smell, like when they were like there was many, I could smell flowers, like the most delicious, amazing flowers. I could feel, I could see, it was just incredible, but I could not hear anything yet. And the moment I started to hear voice was one day that I threw a big tantrum. And what happened is that I was not connected to my persona. I did not feel related to my name, to who I was. And then one day they were calling me to eat dinner. Ingrid, Ingrid. And I'm like, hey, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And then the lady came and like, Ingrid, we're calling you. And I'm like, stop calling me like that. Then she said, like, then what is your name? How should we call you? And then, yeah, the moment she said, like, what is your name? I said, I do not need one. And then, of course, imagine like this child, like, they couldn't understand anything that was happening back then, especially early 70s, no knowledge of any of this. In Colombia, they sent me to bed, like, we had enough with you. I'm in bed and I'm crying. I'm like, and then is when for the first time I heard voice. And it was this very loving, compassionate, soft voice that said to me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. Like you already know. And it's just that clear understanding that, yeah, labels are not needed. Like the essence of that, you are the essence of a tree, of a bird, it's essence, period. So in reality, we're the one naming things. But of course, I understood later in my human experience, yeah, we need a name, we need a role, we need a personality. Well, yes, but of course, at that moment, I was so confused. I'm like, what is happening? And they started to bring these clarities to me. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. I'm not crazy. I get now why I don't need a name. See, it was like, because I went back to the essence that I am, the essence that doesn't need labels. And then they also told me it's going to take time for them to also understand what is happening. So it's better that you don't share. And for me, it was the sense, Natasha, but why they don't understand? Why I cannot share? I mean, I'm just a child and I don't get it. But yeah, pretty fast I started to realize, oh yeah, they're not getting anything. And I was just imagining the eyes of the adults, you're just a child. And it's like, oh, she's imagining things, she's dreaming, she has a fantasy. It's especially with children, we don't pay attention or really believe these things. So I realized pretty fast that people didn't get it, what I was trying to share. And then they also said to me that someday, and they showed me that in the future, someday you will share. But that day is not yet. And they also said there's people that will come to your life to guide you and to help you. And they were very right. The first person that was there to guide me to understand was my mom. And this all happened because when I went to school, of course, my mom was listening things, but again, it's just like, oh my God, this child has a huge imagination. But when I went to school, I started to paint beings of light everywhere. And I always make the joke that I say, the beings of light told me not to talk about them, but they didn't say not to paint. They didn't say don't paint. So it like I was painting beings of light everywhere because a child has to express himself, herself, and I am painting beings of light everywhere. And the teacher was curious and she's like, whoa. So she came to me, I'm like, are these the sun, the stars? She thought that I was just is this these redundant paintings. And then I said, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And then the teacher was like, whoa. Then she thought that I was having imaginary friends. And she called my parents. And I knew at that moment I had to be quiet when she started to ask more questions. And my dad was busy, so my mom came to school. And she's showing all these paintings to my mom. And from these paintings is that we also realized later that I could see auras because all my paintings were just perfectly, everything had auras around. I thought that's the way things look because that's what I saw. And then when they're discussing all this, you imagine a child with the need of being validated. I turned to my mom desperate. I said, Mom, these are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. And my mom turned to me and looked at me with those mom eyes like, be quiet. Because my mom was a teacher too, and she didn't want me to be in trouble at school. So I just went quiet, and my mom just said, this is just a phase. She just has a lot of imagination, whatever, we will work with this. And we left. Imagine I felt heartbroken. I just felt no one believes me. I am alone. And it's when we were on our way home and my mom confessed to me that she believed me because she also could see things that others could not see. I'm like, what? And it's when my mom confessed that she could see what we call spirits. And then, but she validated what the beings of light said. She said, but do not tell this to anybody because people are fearful to what they don't understand. So you better be quiet. So that's what brought me to be quiet for so many years until the time was right. And then this was, oh, sorry. So this was the moment where, yes, I have, okay. Then with my mom, she told me not to share with anyone. And imagine what that does to a child. It's just really hard to hold this kind of, let's call it energy within yourself. And the other thing is that up to this point of my life, my mom and I saw that I didn't know. I was too little to really understand what she was referring as spirits. But later, when I was 6 years old, I started to see spirits too. Now I am 6. I have better understanding, better way to speak, all that. And then, Natasha, this was when I had that clear realization that the spirits and the beings of light were not the same. Because with the spirits, I felt this tremendous fear. And then I went to my mom, and it's when I told her, Mom, no, the spirits and the beings of light are not the same thing. And then my mom is when she asked me to explain what is it in detail, what is it that I'm seeing. Again, now I'm 6, I have a better language, and I explained to her, and it's when she started to cry. And she's like, I think that you see angels. She's crying of emotion, like, oh, you see angels. And I just was like, but of course, she didn't understand or see it that way until that moment, because I never expressed any wings. And I said, Mom, but they cannot be angels because they don't have wings. And we were in the Catholic teachings, and it was like an angel with no wings. So I said, I don't know. But that's when we started to see that difference. But since I have been already talking with the beings of life for a while, is when I asked them directly. I said, first, I said, what is with these dark spirits? I called them dark, not because they were bad, but because they caused me fear. And then I just thought they were bad. So with the beings of light, I never felt anything like that. It was just peace and goodness. And oh, it was incredible. So I thought they were going to say something related to the fact that, oh, yeah. No. The answer was amazing is when they say that you call spirits, you, us, in essence, we're all the same. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. And that you call spirits are just beings that have forgotten who they are. And they are too focused in the matters of this world. So their vibrational frequency is lower. And that's what causes you fear, is just a difference in vibration. When you're connected with beings of light, with high-level spirits, the vibration is very high, and you have to be vibrating very high. So you have an encounter such as that, you're going to feel the difference in vibration, that's all. But they say you can help them just by wishing them good, just by guiding them to the light. And that was an incredible, incredible teaching at such a short age. And the other thing is when I asked them, Natasha, this is incredible. I said to them, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And the answer was incredible. They said, we are what you want us to be. When they say the universe presents to you in the way that is good to you, that is going to guide you to grow and evolve. So, yeah, at the end, again, there's no labels. The light of awareness guides you wherever you are at your own level. So it just will bring you higher, higher, higher. So, oh gosh, there's just so much about all this.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine the teachers in those days, even still today, they still don't understand. And it's sad, I think if people really knew who they were, they would stop worrying about things, and getting so caught up in the moment and anxiety and all of that. But yeah. Wow. So, and your mom, just a question, you were starting to see spirits when you were 6. Do you think it's because you were, when you get older, you become more earthbound, kind of like lose the veil. So then your frequency would have also been a little bit lower to be able to pick up on them, not intentionally, but
Yeah, and it also was lower. Yes, you're very right, because now I am in a school and I'm like suffering many other things, and I am now at such an age comparing myself with other kids, becoming, without knowing that or using that word because you're too little for that, but like a victim, like why is this happening to me? Why am I different? So of course now I'm more earthbound in many ways, even in my vibration. Now I am melancholic and I am depressed, and I'm why I am not like anybody else. So yeah, so you start now meeting vibrations that are meeting those same vibrations. Yeah.
yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you just say to them, go to the lights, you're not meant to be here?
Yes, yes,
And then
yes.
they
And
go?
oh yeah, so it's amazing the service we can do at any level is incredible. But of course, it took many years to learn more and to also overcome fear, because I had, and I wrote, I wrote a book where I, so we don't take too long in our talk right now, but where I tell the stories of few things that happened with these spirits that brought me to have a lot of fear. So also overcome those fears and all that took time. And of course, when also there's the TV and everything around showing you that you should fear and your religion itself. And even when I went to church, because again, I grew up as Catholic, and when I went to tell the priest, because look, Natasha, my love for God was such. Imagine like a 9-year old girl now, I'm doing my first communion, and my love for God was, I could not find anybody so in love with God around me as the way I was. And then I thought that the way to go was like becoming a nun or something like that, because how else? That's what you're learning. I mean, that's how you marry God. And then soon I started to be more conscious of what the sermon in the church was, and the fear of God, and the way I went to Catholic school, and the way people were being treated and everything. I'm like, I'm finding many discrepancies. And when I went to tell the priest, like, how can you fear? I said, how can you fear the one that loves us the most? Because like I said, at the beginning, I didn't put name, but when I realized that embrace was the sweetest hug I have ever felt, the hug of our mother, father in heaven, say, how can you fear that? And the priest, of course, look at me like, what do you know? You're but a child. And those are the words of the devil. And he put me to pray. So not even, I could not find, let's call it, solace. I could not find anyone, not a school, not my mom was the only person. And thankfully, I will mention my grandmother, but no one else at church, nowhere I could find a place where I could align with what I was experiencing. Thankfully, the other person was my grandmother, my father's mother. She was also raised as Catholic, but she was a very rebellious woman. And she always thought there has to be more. There has to be more in the teachings. There has to be more about us. And she joined an order called the Rosicrucian Order. It was just looking deeper into the nature that we are. And she started then to study Hinduism and Buddhism, Kabbalah, and the chakras and everything. She's like, there has to be more. And she started to bring these teachings to our home. She did not live, and she lived in Venezuela. We lived in Colombia, so we didn't see her that often. And One time she came to our house bringing all these teachings, and I'm like, wow, grandma talks like the beings of light. So grandma and I became like really good buddies, very close to each other. And then thankfully, she was the one that brought me through the path of spirituality. Because otherwise, I would have remained in the experiences with probably never having the understanding of what had happened to me, what was all this about. But my grandma she taught me how to meditate. So my mom taught me how to pray, my grandma how to meditate. So now I'm in just that, being able through time to go back to that silence, to that inner. And then my grandma was just an incredible guidance, because she started to bring me books and teachings. By the age of 9, while other kids are playing and doing other things, I'm reading books like the Bhagavad Gita, books of the sermons, self-realization. So of course I was like anybody else around my age, but grandma was there. So that was thankfully what was able to guide me to go deeper and not just remain in like experience, because at the end of the day, it's not the experience, but what is behind the experience. What is all this about? So I would just say, in a way, that probably made things a little more difficult, because now I was even more different than anybody else, because I'm having deeper understandings. So at school, I was like, no friends, nobody. I mean, until just at the very end of the school. And that was the thing, Natasha, when I finished high school, due to some really nasty girls, at the end, I was able to get a couple of friends, because there was some girls that kind of like feel empathic, and they were more like thinkers and readers, and they're like, so I had 2 friends at the end. But when I went to college is when I decided, you know what? I want to be like everybody else. And people ask me, because there was a moment where I cut my connection with the beings of light. But because what people don't understand is that one of the deepest yearnings of the heart is the sense of wanting to belong. We need to belong. And we need to feel that we are loved, that we belong here. If I didn't feel I belong here, I could not stay. Because there was moments where I had suicidal thoughts. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be home. So I had to go to the place where, and immediately the beings, it was just like, yeah, it was that clarity. This girl needs to ground. And I picked a career that was very grounding. I picked science. And, incredibly, Natasha, I knew I was going to be a scientist since I was 4 years old. I started to have visions since I was very little. And by 4, the first time I saw the ocean, I told my mom, because again, I was born in the mountains. And when I saw the ocean, I was mesmerized. And I told my mom, when I grow up, I'm going to know what is under that blanket. And when I was 5, I told my dad, I'm going to be a marine scientist. And my dad was like, okay, is that what you want to do? That's what you will do. He didn't know why I came with this. And that's what I wanted to be. And so being a scientist and picking a career like that was very important, because it helped me ground. And then having that time in my life where I disconnected. But I also tell the beings, so like the people, this disconnection, they said like, how could you disconnect? And I said, how could you leave home and find your own way and your own life? Because we need that independence. We need to grow as beings. And we need to actually know the strength and the power of our soul through our own experience. So now this was the path that when I disconnected, I had another experience there, but it's when the being so light, I had an experience in which I entered in that realm of the light, but completely aware. And then when I came back, I said, how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And when did we forget? And then the being so light said to me, in 20 years, you will understand. So they show me, for now, just go, go and live in your life, and things will let it flow, and things will become clear to you when the time is right. So yeah, that happened. But also in those 20 years, I had a lot of sufferings and a lot of challenges, like all of us do. But all that was necessary for, I guess, at the end, wanting to call for the light again. And it was necessary for in the growth of empathy and connection and compassion for others and for myself. So it's all the path of growth and evolution that we all go through. Yeah.
And I think it's so difficult to get answers from people who don't know because they have no idea what you're going through.
No
And also,
idea.
what you mentioned earlier before the interview started was about embodiment. You know, the fact that the beings came here, that is actually what it's about. It's not about trying to leave the body. It's about trying to live to life's fullest within the body.
Yes, to embody your awareness, to embody your power, to embody the whole of yourself. So that's one of the biggest teachings for me. But it took a lot of disembodiment to understand that what I actually needed was to be whole.
Yeah.
Wholeness is when I received that clear teaching from the beings of light. Oneness starts within. We have to become whole with the whole of it. Otherwise, yeah, we're always again divided. It's the part like we're looking in reality for connection to from that wholeness. And if we're thinking in terms of this and that, then we're always going to be in that dichotomy, divided. So it's like, oh, I get it. I get it. Is
Yeah.
you know, the process of waking up is incredible because there's three phases of waking up. Is the waking, the state of when I wake up the mind, the realization, oh, I am more than my body. I am more than my physical reality. There's more. So you become soul conscious. And now it comes the next step in the awakening processes, which is the awakening of the heart. It's like, oh, now you go deeper. It's not just the awakening of the mind, but now it's, you expand yourself in the sense of compassion, in the sense of openness, in the sense of like, that's what brings you to one, to be one with the whole. And the next step is the embodiment of all this. It's like the grounding of all of it, the awakening of the grounded being, because it's not enough to be self-realized. Otherwise, you just go to a cave and you don't move anymore from there. We need to be self-actualized. How do I bring all these grounded so I can be a whole being here and share this with the world? So that's the real process of waking up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with a lot of people that have had NDEs, had an experience that they wanted to, but they still haven't actualized. So even they are at different levels in their own journey. Just because you've had an near-death experience doesn't mean it suddenly made you more, it's a process. It's a process of integration, of being open, of learning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And to the point that, I mean, this doesn't happen to many of us, but I have discovered many, many more people that, because at the beginning it was like people would say it's not possible to have more than one near-death experiences. I have had, now I know that I have had four, because there was one I had in infancy I didn't even know I had until it was revealed to me. But I have had multiple near-death experiences, but each one peel a layer, peel a layer. And it brought me again to realize it's not the experience, but is the what is behind the experience, what is the purpose. And it's like going deeper and deeper and deeper. And in my last near-death experience, I would just tell this quick, that way this doesn't get too long. But in my last near-death was the realization of the complete and full realization of what home was. That started since I was very little, but in this last experience, it happened in a surgery only 2 years ago, or it's going to be about 3. 3 years ago, I had a surgery, and even before the surgery, I told the doctor that she had to pay attention because something was going to happen. And the doctor, because I was so on it, she called the anesthesiologist. She listened. I was like, you really have to monitor my blood pressure. I was even on it. I said, you have to monitor my blood pressure closely. I mean, they always do in surgery, but I was like, and then, during the surgery, my blood pressure dropped. I went into hypothermia and I was back in the light. And when I was back in the light, Natasha, this was the first time from all the experiences that I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back. And this was incredible because in many of the near-death experiencers that I have here, they usually told you have to go back. It's not your time. This time, I was given the choice. And when I heard if I wanted to stay, I'm like, of course I want to stay. I've been wanting to stay all my life. What is even this question? Like, I also suffered from depression many years because I wanted to go back home. And now I am home. What are you even asking? And in that moment, I even felt bad about sharing later when I came back, because although I adore my husband, my son, my family, I was completely detached. It was the place where, Natasha, where you know that absolutely everything is perfect and everything is happening according to a plan, and that everything that meant to happen, even if I didn't come back, whatever my son had to go through, or my husband or my family, was perfect. So nothing to worry. And I'm like, free. But then I heard, or you want to go back. And it's when I said, wait a minute. It's when all those years of meditation and practicing awareness and presence came in places, when I said, wait, is this a test? I said, because if God, or let's call it source, or let's call it the light of universal awareness, is absolutely everywhere, and absolutely everything is a manifestation of consciousness. So where is here and where is there? I said, this is a trick. There is no here and there is not there. I said, wow, everything is just a trick of the mind. So it's when the only thing that I thought to say at that moment was, keep me where I can serve God the most. Keep me where I can serve you, God, the most. And at that moment, I was back. But to come back, there was a little tricky step there, because at that moment is when I started to go back and think, oh, my son, my husband, my family, what I need to keep doing the service, blah, blah. You need an anchor. And that brought me back. But it's when I came back with the absolute experiential clarity, not mine, no teaching, experiential, that home is not a place, it's a state of being. And at that moment is when I also realized it's not about near death, it's about near life. How can I live my life to the fullest, like you just said, in complete and total embodiment? Because there is no here, there is not there. So it's just be present right now with the fullest of what is. That's the joy. Yeah.
Oh, well, Ingrid, I could hear you, I could listen to you talk for ages, but unfortunately, I
Yes,
think I
yeah.
think we'll need to wrap it up here. But before we go, can you let us know where the people can get hold of you if they want to connect?
Yes, I have a website. It's called ingridhonkala.com, and I have also all the different media pages, Facebook, Instagram. I have a new YouTube channel. It's really beautiful. It's with two other friends. They are also have near their experiences. They also communicate and connect with, I call it beings of light in general, but the angels and all these beautiful, amazing divine forces. And it's called In Dying, I Began to Live. I have my
Wonderful.
own YouTube channel too, Ingrid Honkala. And then, yeah, through my website, if people want to connect, I also do one sessions and workshops and classes and talks, all kind of stuff. So,
Right.
yes.
I'll leave your links in the description. And then do you have a message for our viewers?
Yes, actually, oh, there's always so many beautiful messages, but one that I was thinking because we were talking about gratitude. There was a very beautiful teachings the beings of light shared with me. They said to me, Ingrid, you don't imagine how grateful everybody would be if they realize that for you to exist, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement. They said, you are a divine intention. I was like, wow, trillions of trillions have to agree to be who I am. So again, is go back to what is good. So it's like, how can I at every moment remember how divine we are? So it's just pause and just remember to be grateful. That's all we need to do.